Most relationship problems aren't caused by what you said, but by something you didn't even know was running the show. If you've ever thought, why does this keep happening? Or why do we always end up here? There's a good chance an invisible pattern is doing more damage than the last argument ever did. Today, I want to help you see it, understand where it comes from, and most importantly, learn how to interrupt it. And yes, I want to tell you about a ridiculous fight my wife and I got into over books. My name is Mike, and for 22 years, I have walked with people through real-life relationship struggles, personally, professionally, and in their closest relationships. These days, I do that as a relationship coach, helping people identify the patterns of arguments that keep repeating. Now, here's the problem most of us don't realize we have. We keep trying to solve our relationship problems at the behavioral level when the real damage is being done at the interpretation level. Have you ever had someone you're in a relationship with get exasperated with you and say, "You're not listening," to which you went ahead and repeated back what they just said to them word for word? And instead of them calming down, they get even more upset with you and they say, "You're still not listening." And now you're thinking, why is it that someone who used to be so easy to get along with is now driving me crazy with things that don't even make sense? Welcome to relationships. This happens with your boss, your partner, your coworkers, your neighbors, your kids, your parents, even people who road rage at us because they have a different opinion than us on the zipper merge. The truth is, there are a lot of invisible things shaping how our relationships show up. And most of us aren't even aware of all the invisible things shaping how we show up, let alone all the invisible things shaping how the other person is showing up. Today, I want to let you in on a perspective you've probably never considered before. One that can immediately lower the frustration in your relationships, help you understand yourself and others with greater clarity, and give practical next steps that you can actually use. Okay, here's the story about a fight I got into with my wife that illustrates how these patterns show up. So about 2 years into our marriage, my wife and I are driving to my mom's place about 20 minutes outside of town. Halfway there, my wife reaches into the center console and she pulls out a receipt. And she says to me with a fair bit of sass and aggression, "You bought more books." And I said, "No, I didn't." She says, "Mike, it's right here. Tell me what you bought." And I said, "Tell me what's on the receipt," trying to be playful. And she says, "No, seriously, how many books have you been buying?" I said, "Just a couple." She said, "Okay, what's on the receipt?" And so I guessed one of the books. And she says, "That's not on here. You bought that? What else did you buy?" And I took another guess, and I was wrong again. She says, "That's not on here either." And in short order, we get into this all-out argument about how we're both spending money and how we are hiding things that we shouldn't be hiding. And we pull into my mom's place, and then we did what most healthy couples do, which is walk into my mom's pretending like we didn't have a fight and everything was just rosy. But the moment we got back in the car to drive home, it is dead silent and ice cold. About 10-15 minutes into the ride home, Tanya says to me, "I have to tell you something." I said, "What?" She said, "That receipt was a grocery receipt." And I immediately smile and recognize two things. First, I married a woman who is significantly more intelligent than myself. And two, what I thought I was hiding was painfully obvious. Turns out, I was confidently wrong. And that's how blind spots work. We think nobody sees our patterns, but they're showing up in our relationships all the time. And the moment we stop pretending that it's about something else, moving forward gets a whole lot easier. Most of us relate to ourselves and to others from what I call the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is the part people can see. Your reactions, your tone, your habits, your conflict style. But beneath the surface, out of sight, is where the real driver lives. Your motivations, your fears, your wiring, your interpretations. And if you don't understand what's taking place below the surface, you'll keep trying to fix surface level problems with surface level solutions, which never works for long. These patterns show up everywhere. For executives, it looks like overfunctioning and control. For athletes, it looks like performance-based worth. For creatives and public figures, it looks like image management and exhaustion. For students, it looks like pressure, comparison, and anxiety about the future. Different stages, different pressures, same invisible driver. Now, at this point, I think a lot of you might be thinking to yourself, okay, clearly I don't see what's happening under the surface. I need a way to see it. We all do. And I've got some really good news for you. There is a way to see what's driving your patterns beneath the surface. It's called the Enneagram. Now, I know most of us hate the idea of being put in a box, but here's the truth. We're already shaped by patterns. Most of us just haven't seen them yet. The Enneagram is a tool that helps you see those patterns and to understand how they've been shaping your thoughts, your reactions, and your relationships. It doesn't trap you, it actually gives you a way out by helping you interrupt old patterns and take back how you are showing up in your relationships. And it's not just about understanding yourself. It's a powerful tool for understanding the people you're in relationship with, why they react the way they do, what they're protecting, and how to respond with more clarity, compassion, and grace. Because even though our below the surface icebergs may be different, we're all carrying something. And when we begin to see that more clearly, everything about our relationships begins to change. I've seen this firsthand. People who used to confuse me and frustrate me suddenly began to make a lot more sense. Not because they changed, but because I could finally see what was driving them. So what I'm going to do next is walk you through the 9 core Enneagram types. I'm confident you're going to see yourself in this, as well as the people you spend the most time with. This isn't a deep dive. Think of it more like a guided overview, just enough for you to notice which ones resonate and which ones you may want to explore more deeply later. As you listen, pay attention to what feels familiar, not just in how you act, but in why you act that way. And just so you know, I've put together a free Enneagram guide to go alongside this. It's there to help you notice patterns as you listen. No pressure to do anything with it. You'll see a QR code on your screen, or you can grab the link in the description whenever you want. Let's start with type 1. Enneagram 1s are known as the strict perfectionists. If you're a 1, you probably don't think of yourself as critical. You think of yourself as responsible. You notice what's off, what could be better, and what should be improved. But under stress, that inner critic doesn't just stay inward, it leaks outward. And suddenly the people around you feel corrected, evaluated, or like they're never quite getting it right. What you experience as trying to help can land very differently on the receiving end. A question that may feel familiar if you're a 1. Do people tell you to just relax sometimes and that drives you nuts? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for 1s, I need to be perfect in order to be okay. All right, let's move on to type 2. Enneagram 2s are known as the considerate helpers. Twos are incredibly intuitive about people. You often know what others need before they even say a word. The challenge is that over time, helping can turn into over-functioning. You start giving without being asked and then feel hurt when it's not noticed or reciprocated. What feels like love sometimes creates an unspoken sense of obligation for others. A question that may feel familiar if you're a two: do you feel unappreciated even though you're always there for others? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for twos: I need to be needed in order to be okay. Now let's look at type 3. Enneagram 3s are known as the competitive achievers. 3s are wired to get things done. You adapt, you perform, and you move fast, and people admire that. The blind spot is that relationships don't run on efficiency. Under stress, people can feel like they're competing with your goals or like they only matter when they're useful. What you call staying productive can feel like emotional distance. A question that may feel familiar if you're a 3: do you feel respected for what you do, but not fully known for who you are? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for 3s: I need to be successful or appear successful in order to be okay. Next is type 4. Enneagram 4s are known as the intense creatives. 4s feel deeply. You notice what's missing, what's meaningful, what's real. But under stress, that depth can turn inward. You can feel misunderstood, overlooked, or different even when people are trying to connect with you. What feels like authenticity to you can sometimes feel like emotional intensity to others. A question that may feel familiar if you're a 4. Do you ever feel like no one quite gets you, even the people who are closest to you? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for 4s: I need to be understood in order to be okay. Let's talk about type 5. Enneagram 5s are known as the quiet specialists. 5s process internally. You think deeply, conserve energy, and value competence. The challenge is that when you pull back to feel safe or prepared, others can feel shut out. What feels like self-protection to you can feel like distance or disengagement to the people who want connection. A question that may feel familiar if you're a 5. Do people tell you you're hard to read or wish that you'd let them in more? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for 5s: I need to have the answer in order to be okay. Next is type 6. Enneagram 6s are known as the loyal skeptics. 6s are incredibly perceptive, and you see risks that others miss, and you care deeply about safety and loyalty. Under stress, that awareness can turn into anxiety or testing people to see if they're trustworthy. What feels like responsibility to you can feel like doubt or tension to others. A question that may be familiar to you if you're a 6. Do you replay conversations later, wondering what you might have missed? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for 6s: I need to be safe and eliminate risk in order to be okay. Let's talk about type 7. Enneagram 7s are known as the enthusiastic visionaries. 7s are energetic, hopeful, and future-focused. You bring lightness into heavy spaces. The challenge is that when things get painful or limiting, you may move on too quickly. What feels like optimism to you feels like avoidance to others. A question that may feel familiar if you're a 7: do people say, you never slow down even when things are serious? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for 7s: I need to be free from limits in order to be okay. Moving on to type 8. Enneagram 8s are known as the active controllers. 8s value strength and honesty. You don't want to waste time dancing around the truth. Under stress, that intensity can overwhelm people, even when your heart is protective. What feels like leadership to you can feel like control to others. A question that may feel familiar to you if you're an 8. Do people either love your strength or feel intimidated by it? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for 8s: I need to be in control and not be controlled in order to be okay. And last but not least, Enneagram 9s are known as the adaptive peacemakers. 9s are deeply attuned to others. You create calm and harmony wherever you go. The challenge is that over time, you may lose touch with what you want. What feels like keeping the peace can feel like disengagement or passivity to others. A question that may feel familiar if you're a 9. Do people ask, what do you want? And you honestly don't know? A quiet belief that often runs underneath for 9s: I need to avoid conflict and keep the peace in order to be okay. Now, as you were listening to those 9 patterns, a couple of things may have happened. One type probably felt uncomfortably familiar. A few others probably sounded like people you know, and maybe 1 or 2 descriptions surprised you. That reaction matters because the Enneagram isn't about putting you in a box. It's about giving you orientation. I like to think of the Enneagram like a GPS for your inner world. A GPS doesn't judge where you are. It doesn't shame you for taking a wrong turn. Unless, of course, you downloaded the voice of Mr. T for your GPS, in which case he threatens to beat you up if you take a wrong turn, but I digress. A GPS simply says you are here, and once you know where you are, you finally have a choice about where you're going. Without that awareness, we keep reacting on autopilot. We repeat the same patterns, have the same arguments, and wonder why nothing really changes. The Enneagram helps interrupt that cycle by not changing who you are, but by helping you respond instead of react. Now there's one more layer that helps all of this make even more sense. The 9 Enneagram types are organized into 3 groups, often called Triads. Some of us tend to lead with our gut. We sense things quickly. We feel a yes or a no in our body before we can even explain it. Types 8, 9, and 1 all live here, each responding differently to a shared tension around anger. That anger might come out strongly, get pushed down, or quietly simmer under the surface, but it often shows up in relationships, whether we realize it or not. Others tend to lead with the heart. Connection, image, and emotional attunement matter deeply. Types 2, 3, and 4 are wired around questions of value and worth, often wondering, am I enough? Do I matter? For these types, shame and self-worth quietly shape how they show up with others, even when it looks like confidence, success, or selflessness on the outside. And some of us tend to lead with the head. We think, anticipate, plan, and try to stay prepared. Types 5, 6, and 7 all share a common undercurrent of fear. Not always panic, but a desire to stay safe, informed, or ahead of what's coming. In relationships, that fear often shows up as overthinking, worry, or the need to stay one step ahead. Here's why this matters so much. When you can recognize your own pattern and understand what's driving the people you're in relationship with, you stop taking everything personally. You gain compassion without losing clarity. And you start responding with intention instead of reflex. Let me give you a real life example of what this looks like when it starts to work. When my wife and I first started learning about the Enneagram, we didn't sit down with a whiteboard or try to analyze each other. We laughed, like actually laughed out loud. Not in a funny, I got you way, but because for the first time, things that had confused and frustrated us for years suddenly made sense. We felt safe enough to start saying things like, oh, that's why that argument always goes sideways, and that's why you reacted so strongly to that. That's why I shut down there. And as we talked, we started noticing patterns, misunderstandings that kept repeating, arguments that weren't really about what we thought they were about. Even short seasons in our marriage where we'd go emotionally cold toward each other. Not because we didn't care, but because we were so frustrated and didn't know how to say what was really going on. What changed wasn't that we suddenly agreed on everything. What changed was that we finally had language. Language that helped us understand what was happening beneath the surface in ourselves and in each other. And once that happened, something really important shifted. We stopped assuming the worst. We stopped personalizing everything. And it became a lot easier to respond with curiosity instead of defensiveness. Now, you might be wondering, okay, Mike, so what type are you? I actually share that and why it matters inside a free resource I've put together called the Relationship Clarity Guide. You'll find a link in the description if you want to check it out. And if any part of this video felt familiar, if you're realizing there might be more going on beneath the surface than you thought, the guide is designed to help you take the next step. It's simple, it's practical, it's meant to help you start noticing your patterns without judgment, overwhelm, or pressure. Take it at your own pace, take what fits, and leave the rest. I'm really glad you're here.